Talk about where we're at now in Job. Okay, so we moved past Job 1 through 3, which is essentially just kind of the introductory stuff of Job. Talks about the story, who Job was before all this stuff happened, why this stuff happened, and then a little bit of kind of just Job's state of mind. Okay, before we jump into his three friends. Now, Job has three friends who are just kind of have been hanging out with him for about a week. Okay, just kind of sitting with them. They've been quiet. They haven't been any talking for about a week, as Job just kind of just lamenting what kind of just the state where he finds himself, because God has allowed all these things to happen. God has allowed his children, his 10 children, to die, all of his possessions to be taken from him. Now Job is sitting here sick with boils. He cuts himself with pottery and different things. He's just a miserable wreck. And so eventually, after about a week, Job just begins to just kind of pour out what he's feeling. And then his friends decide that about that time that Job is ready to speak is when they're ready to step in and help save Job. And so we talked about last week, we talked about one of Job's friends named Eliphaz. Okay, and Eliphaz is the first one to speak. A lot of people think maybe that's because he's the oldest or whatever, but Eliphaz is the first one to speak. And so we just talked about his argument. Okay? We talked about what he brought to Job. And essentially, all three friends are going to bring the same argument. Okay? They're going to bring the argument that because Job is wicked, he is being punished because that's the way the universe works. That's the way God works. That the good receive rewards, the bad are punished and destroyed. Okay? Job's argument, rebuttal to that is, I'm not wicked, I haven't done bad things, and yet this is still happening to me. Okay, now we talked about last week that Job was probably, before all of this happened, would have probably agreed with much of what these guys were saying. Okay, Job's frame of reference would have been similar to theirs. It may have been a little bit different, but it would have been similar. It would have been that if you're good, then good things are going to happen. If you're obedient to God, and you do the sacrifices, and you do the routine like Job had always done, then you're going to be good. Because that's what Job's life had proven before this. Right? Job had been good. He had been upright and blameless, as it talks about in the beginning. He had given sacrifices. He'd been obedient to God, and therefore he had possessions. He had riches. He had a bunch of kids. He had health. He had all of this stuff. Okay, so this is generally the framework that they're coming from. Now they're going to each friend is going to approach it differently. Okay, so that's what we're going to kind of talk about tonight. They're going to approach things a little bit different. So Eliphaz was a little bit more of a mystic, kind of a spiritualist. Like he wanted to draw on the supernatural. So he talked about this spirit that kind of floated past his face one night and told him that man can't be right before God and that man has to be obedient and all these different things. And so Job should repent because that's the way things work. We talked about this argument that these guys kind of believe in a monotheistic karma. Okay, so they believe in God and who God is, but essentially it's just karma. It's good things happen. Good comes from good and bad comes from bad, and there's nothing in between. Okay? And Job is refuting all of this, always standing on the fact that Job is righteous. Okay? And we talked about how that in and of itself is a poor position to be in. Okay? Because Job is wanting to trust his own righteousness and then call God unjust. So God is somehow unjust in treating Job this way because Job has been obedient. Right? Okay, and so we talked about last week, and I'll get that stuff up tomorrow. We'll get it up on YouTube, so if you missed that, you can go back and kind of rehash. Or maybe if it was kind of a longer session last week, and so maybe if you kind of zoned out or something like that, you can go back and check it out. Okay, so this week, any questions?
What chapter?
8. Okay, chapter 8. This week we're talking about a cat named Bildad. Okay, Bildad is the next friend who speaks. Okay, and he kind of takes a little bit of a different approach. Okay, so where Eliphaz, yes, chapter 8, where Eliphaz was kind of coming from the mystic kind of spirituality, kind of that's his focus. Bildad is going to focus on kind of the historical things. He's going to talk about the traditions of the men who came before these men. Okay, and so he's going to talk about how the history, the things that why this has been proven to be. Okay, so he's going to talk about the tradition of the elders. So we're going to read a little bit. Bildad's first little thing is not real long, so we're going to read quite a bit of it just to hopefully kind of get a hold of what he's saying. Okay, so chapter 8, verse 1 says this: Then Bildad the Shuhite answered and said, How long will you say these things, and the words of your mouth be a great wind? Does God pervert justice, or does the Almighty pervert the right? if your children have sinned against him, he has delivered them into the hand of their transgression. If you will seek God and plead with the Almighty for mercy, if you are pure and upright, surely then he will rouse himself for you and restore your rightful habitation. Okay, so I want to stop right there. So this is what he's saying, okay? So he is making the assumption that there was something wrong with Job's kids, right? Because all 10 of them die at once. Okay? So he's making the assumption. Okay? But here's the thing. God, this is really what is underlying everything that Bildad is saying. God is just when he rewards the good and punishes the bad. That is justice. So justice for these men, justice as Bildad is going to express it, is external. Okay, what God gives us here on earth is what is just. Okay, so if we are bad, he is just in giving us that. Punishment, wrath, judgment. Okay? If we are good, then God is just in giving us reward, blessing, health, riches. You following me? Okay, so what he is asking, because this is coming off of Job's first response to Eliphaz in defending his cause as being righteous. So his first questions are, does God pervert justice? Would God punish or seemingly punish a righteous man? So would God allow suffering to happen to a righteous man?
No.
Okay? According to Bildad, no. But what do we have happening? Right. Job is upright and blameless and yet suffering calamity. Okay. So, and again, we have this timeline we got from Eliphaz last week. Okay, if you will seek God. Eliphaz always was one of the conclusions of his argument was, if you will just repent, if you will just do right things again, or go back to doing right things, or start doing right things now, then God will be in your debt, because all he can do is do good to those who do good. Okay? So again, we see a similar argument here with Bildad. And though your beginning was small, your latter days will be very great. For inquire, please. Okay, this is where he talks about his source for all this. For inquire, please, of bygone ages, and consider what the fathers have searched out. For we are but of yesterday, and know nothing. For our days on earth are a shadow. Will they not teach you and tell you and utter words of their understanding? Okay, so again, what he's wanting to do is he's wanting to draw back from the fathers of old, from the traditions of old. Okay, now, do we have a problem with what he's saying? Do we have a problem with thinking that we are but of yesterday and we know nothing? For our days on earth are a shadow. I mean, do we have a problem with this? No. No, we don't have a problem with this. We talk about this all the time. Remember, our scope is limited. And so Bildad is really trying to do something very good. He's trying to go beyond his own scope and go to the scope of those who have come before, what has been proven by those before. Okay? We're going to find problems with this. Go down to verse 20, chapter 8, verse 20. Bildad's going to sum everything up with this. Behold, God will not reject a blameless man. So here's what he's saying. Okay? God will not allow suffering. God will not allow calamity. God will not allow the things that Job has experienced. He will not allow those things for a righteous or a blameless man. Nor will God, okay, because this is the other side of the argument, okay? Nor will God take the hand of evildoers. Okay, so God is seen, okay, in this physical, in this time, in this physical universe, that he does good to those who are good, bad to those who are bad. So, if God looks at a blameless man, as Job was, and allows these things to happen, okay, then he is unjust. That is what he's saying. Not only that, but if God allows evildoers, if he allows the wicked to prosper, God is also not just. You follow me? Because there's both sides. And this is what Job talked about in his response to Eliphaz. He talked about how, listen, everybody suffers. Okay? And especially the poor, especially the needy, especially the afflicted, they suffer. These things happen. And so Job's friends are wanting to resist that. Why? Because they have a problem with that kind of God. They have a problem with a God who would allow evil to persist and good to suffer. Look over to 18. Chapter 18. Okay, because something that's always interesting to me about his friends is their patience gets thin pretty quickly. So again, Job has been moving through. He's been responding, and so it's Bildad's turn to talk again. We're just going to read a portion of what he says. How long will you hunt for words? Consider, and then we will speak. Why are we counted as cattle? Why are we stupid in your sight? You who tear yourself in your anger. Shall the earth be forsaken for you, or the rock be removed out of its place? Okay, so what he's saying is, why would God pick on you? Why are you so special and so understanding that history can't persuade you, that we can't persuade you, that even the natural occurrences can't persuade you, that there's something so different about you? Indeed, the light of the wicked is put out, and the flame of his fire does not shine. So he's going back to prove this happens. His strong steps are shortened, and his own schemes throw him down. For he is cast into a net by his own feet, and he walks on its mesh. A trap seizes him by the heel, a snare lays hold of him. A rope is hidden for him in the ground, a trap for him in the path. Terrors frighten him on every side, and chase it at his heels. His strength is famished, and calamity is ready for his stumbling. It consumes the parts of his skin. The firstborn of death consumes his limbs. He is torn from the tent in which he trusted and is brought to the king of terrors. In his tent dwells that which is none of his. Sulfur is scattered over his habitation. His roots dry up beneath, and his branches wither above. His memory perishes from the earth, and he has no name in the street. He is thrust from light into darkness and driven out of the world. He has no posterity or progeny among his people, and no survivor where he used to live. They of the west are appalled at his day, and horror seizes them of the east. Surely such are the dwellings of the unrighteous. Such is the place of him who knows not God. Okay. What I want us to see in Bildad, we need to see ourselves in Bildad, because we, even though we may not be as extreme, even though we may not kind of dive up the deep end like they did, we kind of throw in some truth, kind of like they do. I mean, we just kind of live in this kind of fantasy world where we want to imagine our own God. Okay? What we would all, if we could just be honest with ourselves tonight, we would all love a God who operated this way, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we all, we would all just be ready to fall in love and worship and be sold out to a God who always punished the evil people. Wouldn't we? Wouldn't we? We would love that God for two very key reasons. One, we're not evil. And two, that make things a lot safer for us. Because if we're not being punished, then we must be one of the good guys. We would love this kind of God. We all want to root for this kind of God. But the problem persists. His friends keep going after him. Bildad in 25 is very short. I'm just going to read it real quick. Bildad finishes everything up with this. Dominion and fear with God, he makes peace in his high heaven. Is there any number to his armies? Upon whom does his light not arise? How then can man be in the right before God? How can he who was born of woman be pure? Behold, even the moon is not bright, and the stars are not pure in his eyes. How much less man who is a maggot, and the Son of Man who is a worm. Okay. So here's the problem here's one of the biggest problems we have. And we talked about this a little bit last week. I want to really focus on it and hone in on it here tonight. Okay, because this question is asked by, it was asked last week by Eliphaz, it's asked again by Job, and Job's first response to Bildad, and it's asked here again at the end of his friends' dialogues. How can man be right before God? Now here's the problem. Because they keep asking this question and they never have an answer for it. Why? Because all his friends want Job to do is be right before God. And their proof for that is that they are obviously right before God. And so if Job would just be like them or like their fathers were, then he then would be right before God instead of being wicked and being punished. So this question is never answered within the realm of mankind. Why? Because man cannot be right before God. That is absolutely true. But we don't achieve this, and that's what they want to point to. We cannot achieve it even. So here's essentially what, again, a summation of Job's friend's point is this. We may not be born into right standing before God, but we can achieve it by doing the right things. Look at me. This is one of the biggest lies that we believe. We absolutely will call ourselves sinners. Why? Because that's what we've been taught. But we don't believe we're the wicked. We will absolutely recognize that we mess up, but this is what we believe in the lie that we tell ourselves. I may have messed up back here or back then or whatever, but I've done enough good since then that God is now happy. And you want to know how I know this is the lie that we believe? Because this is the way we live with our parents. Isn't it? We do something wrong, and so we're going to do a lot of right things so they're not mad at us anymore? Anybody ever been there? You played that game with your family? Right? You get busted for something, and man, you're right there to help with the dishes after you've been in trouble. Yeah? I mean, you're right. I mean, you get busted for something, and you want things to be happy again. And so what is your plan? Your plan is to do enough good things that now they can't be mad at you anymore. We've all played that game. We do that. You do that with your teachers. I've been a teacher, okay? You want to know who the most attentive people are in class? The ones who just got caught for not paying attention. This is the mode that we operate. Our mode operated is we are going to preserve what makes us happy. And what makes us happy, the majority of the time, is that people aren't hating on us. Especially the stuffy teachers and parents who are a little bit, we really believe them to be crazy. But they're definitely unreasonable. But we will appease them until it suits us. This is the lie that we believe. This is the way we act towards God. We sin, we feel bad about it, so what do? Oh, I know, I'll go to church, I'll read my Bible, I'll listen to Christian music, I'll wear my Christian t-shirt, or I'll go to Sunday school instead of just going to big church, and this is what we do. I want to look at the other side. Go to Job chapter 9. Because we talked about last week, and what we continued to bring up is that Job is not in the right either. Both Job and his friends are going to say things that are right, but from a heart that is wrong. Okay? So I just want to highlight some things that Job is going to say. Okay? So again, chapter 9, we see in verse 2, we see the question again. Truly I know that it is so, but how can a man be in the right before God? Okay, so what he's saying is, listen, I hear what you're saying. I would be there with you, except for the fact that I am righteous, and this is happening to me. Okay? If one wished to contend with him, one could not answer him once in 1,000 times. Okay? So I want to jump to verse 15. I want us to hear Job's words. Verse 15 says this, though I am in the right. Do you hear it? This is Job, a man speaking of his complaint against God. Though I am in the right. I cannot answer him. I must appeal for mercy to my accuser. Verse 19, if it is a contest of strength, behold, he is mighty. If it is a matter of justice, who can summon him? Though I am in the right, my own mouth would condemn me. Though I am blameless, he would prove me perverse. I am blameless. I regard not myself. I loathe my life. It is all one. Therefore I say, he destroys both the blameless and the wicked. So do you hear it? Okay, so Job has twisted this theology. Okay, he's twisted his view of God that the friends are presenting, that he wants to agree with, except for the fact that he sees himself as blameless. So he's twisted it that God is absolutely just in defeating the wicked, but he's also unjust in persecuting the righteous. Because that must be so. Why? Because Job is right. Now, I want to ask you something. Okay, because this is another game that we play. Okay, and I don't always like to go back to childish things, but it tends to be where our hearts usually are. Okay, so anybody, have you ever been caught doing something that other people were also doing, and you were the one that got caught? Anybody? You got caught doing something that was wrong, that other people were also doing, but you're the one who got in trouble. Anybody with siblings has ever, that you've done this? Okay? So this is the way it used to roll in my house, okay? Because I'm the older brother, okay? My brother would okay, this is going to sound awful, but my brother would come at me and want to fight. And I would, for 5 to 10 minutes, be pushing him off and pushing him off and pushing him off. And then all of a sudden, when I snap and get him in a headlock, that's when my mom comes in. Okay? And this is the story of my life with my brother. Okay? As soon as and he's sitting there crying, he turns on the water. He is now no longer the one who is doing something wrong. We're both fighting. I'm not trying to say that I was doing something right, okay, even though I was, but I'm not trying to say it. But when my mom comes in and sees me with my little brother in a headlock, I'm the one who gets it. Anybody ever been there? Okay. This is Job's stance. I am right. Because listen, and this is not what Job is going to say explicitly, but this is what's in Job's heart. I am right because my sin is righteousness, not wickedness. Do you hear me? Job believes himself to be right because he has had the right behavior instead of the wrong behavior. Job's sin is self-righteousness instead of wickedness. Okay? We talked about it in week 1. This is a while back. And we talk about this actually all the time. There is nobody. This is the answer to the question. How can man be right before God? Answer. He cannot be right before God. But here's the game we play. Here's the game you play. Here's the game I play. I'm not as bad as that other person. So Job wants to look at his life and then look at the life of a wicked man and say, I am better than that. Isn't that what we like to do? When we're talking to our parents, or we're thinking, our parents are getting on to us because we didn't clean our room, and we didn't help with the dishes, or we didn't make our bed. Okay, that was always my mom's favorite with me. I didn't make my bed in the morning. Okay, that's always my wife's favorite with me too. I didn't make the bed in the morning. Okay, and to them. Okay, listen, to them. Okay, to my mom, when I was a teenager and not making my bed, that was a sin. You know what my mind immediately jumped to? Well, at least I'm not doing this. Right? Anybody been there? Am I on my own? Right? I get home 3 minutes late for my curfew. My dad's sitting up. We have to talk for another hour about how wrong it was for me to be 3 minutes late. And I didn't call because I was 3 minutes late. My initial reaction, at least I'm not out partying. At least I'm not out with some girl. At least I'm not this. Isn't that the stance we take? Your parents are chewing you out for not helping with the dishes. Isn't that the stance you take? At least I'm not as bad as this other kid I know. At least I'm not as bad as those jokers at my school. At least I'm not as bad as some of the friends I bring around. And the reason I bring them around is so my mom will see how bad they are and how good I am. This is the stance Job takes with God. This is the stance. Listen to me. This is the stance you take with God. So here's what happens, folks. Listen to me. God comes to you. Oftentimes, and listen, I know we don't like this part, but this is the truth. God comes to you through your parents and says you shouldn't do this. And your response is, that's unjust because I'm in the right. Do we hear Job in ourselves there? We are willing to look at God in the face of our parents and in our hearts say, you are unjust because I am in the right. Now, this is not just for you, because this is what it looks like whenever you get older, because you never get done with this. This is what it looks like whenever you get older. This is what it looks like for me. I get stopped by a police officer going 7 miles over. I haven't robbed anybody. I haven't killed anybody. I'm not pushing drugs. I am just driving my car a little bit faster than what the little sign says. He pulls me over and says, I have to give you a ticket because you broke the law. You know what my mind says? This is unjust because I am in the right. You get a job. Your boss gets on to you for going 10 minutes over your lunch break. And this same thought will come into your mind again. God, through your boss. Listen, that's the way it works. Authorities are all established by God. So God, through your boss, says you need to do right. And what do you say? That's unjust because I'm in right. This is the stance we all take. This is where we find ourselves. It's not just Job who's off. It's not just... Because this is what we love to do. We love to put ourselves in Job's shoes. And we want to root for Job. We want to root for Job because Job is just being oppressed by God. And we want to root for him. And we want him to get his in the end. And we mock his 3 friends, even though we believe the same things they do. We just don't sit around and talk to a guy who's suffering to do it. But we believe the same things. But we want to root for Job. Job is not the one we should be rooting for. We're not on Job's side here. Why? Because Job is not right. But we want to believe that we have somehow earned our own uprightness. We have somehow earned our own blamelessness. And as we talked about in week 3, that is not the case. We have not earned our own righteousness. We have not somehow achieved a status where we can stand before God and say, you're wrong, I'm right. Just like with Job, his righteousness was given to him at the cross of Christ. So, what do we do with this? What do you do with this? Listen, we wrestle with these things and we talk about these things because we need to see where we get off. You need to see where you get off. Look at me, everybody. You don't get to be right because you've done a few good things. You don't get to stand before God in the face of your teachers, in the face of your parents, in the face of a boss, in the face of even other people, and be right on your own. I'm going to tell you something that I heard yesterday at a conference. A guy, Matt Chandler, who was speaking. You guys know Matt, I went to camp for this. He said something that he says over and over again whenever he preaches, and something that I think is very relevant now. There is nobody who has lied to you, tricked you, deceived you, or done harm to you more than you have. When we tell ourselves that we are right, especially before God, we have lied to ourselves. And listen to me, folks. This gets very serious. I want everybody's eyes on me. Everybody look at me. Look at me. Because the end of that lie is hell. You hear me? The end of that lie is hell. As we move forward, listen, my prayer for you as we continue to study Job, we've still got probably 4 or 5 weeks of studying Job. As we continue to study Job, it is my prayer for you that you will see the lies that you have believed, told by yourself. My prayer for you is that you will see the lie that you tell yourself every day. That's my prayer for me. That's my prayer for my wife. That's my prayer for my girls, is that we would be able to see the lies that we tell ourselves. And listen, that put us standing before God, spitting in His face and telling Him that He is unjust, that we